When I announced my promotion, my family said, "What about me?" I should have known better than to lead with, "I have some amazing news," at Sunday dinner. The words had barely left my mouth before my mom's fork paused halfway to her lips, and that familiar calculating look crossed her face. Dad lowered his beer. My sister Emma stopped scrolling through her phone for the first time all evening. Even my brother Jake, who usually couldn't care less about anything that didn't involve his PlayStation, suddenly perked up like a dog hearing a treat bag crinkle. "I got the promotion," I announced, trying to keep the excitement in my voice despite the sudden shift in energy around the table. "Senior software architect. It's a 40% salary increase. I'm finally breaking six figures." The silence stretched for exactly 3 heartbeats. Then chaos. "Oh, thank God," Mom gasped, pressing her hand to her chest. "Does this mean you can finally help us with the mortgage payments? We're 2 months behind, and I've been losing sleep." "Wait, what about my student loans?" Emma interrupted, leaning forward so fast she nearly knocked over her water glass. "You said when you got a better job, you'd help me pay them off. I owe $47,000, and the interest is killing me." Jake jumped in before I could even process what was happening. "Dude, perfect timing. I've been looking at this car, a 2019 Mustang GT. Only $32,000, and since you're making bank now." "Hold on," Dad's voice boomed over everyone else's, "your mother and I have been talking about getting that kitchen renovation done. Now that you're successful, maybe it's time to give back to the people who raised you. We're thinking $15,000 should cover it." I sat there, fork suspended in midair, staring at these people who shared my DNA. 4 months ago, when I was eating ramen noodles for the 3rd night in a row because I'd sent Mom $300 for her emergency electric bill, none of them had asked how I was doing. When I was wearing the same 3 button-down shirts to interviews because I couldn't afford new clothes, Dad had lectured me about not trying hard enough in my career. "Congratulations would be nice," I said quietly. "What?" Mom looked genuinely confused. "Congratulations. You know, the thing people say when someone achieves something they've worked toward for years." Emma rolled her eyes. "Obviously we're proud of you. But let's be practical here. You've been struggling to help the family, and now you finally can. Isn't that exciting? I've been struggling, period. Not just struggling to help you guys." I set my fork down, appetite completely gone. I've been living in a studio apartment with a broken air conditioner and a refrigerator that only works half the time. "But that's all going to change now," Jake said, as if he hadn't heard a word I'd said. "So about that Mustang." "You're not getting a Mustang, Jake. You're 25 years old and work 15 hours a week at GameStop." His face flushed red. "That's temporary, and you know it. Family is supposed to help family. When you were in college, who do you think paid for your textbooks? I worked 3 jobs and took out loans that I'm still paying off." The familiar guilt trip was already starting. I could see it in Mom's disappointed expression, in Dad's crossed arms, in the way Emma was shaking her head like I was being unreasonable. This was the same script we'd been following for years, except now the dollar amounts were bigger. But something felt different this time. Maybe it was finally having leverage, or maybe I was just tired of being everyone's backup plan. "You know what's funny?" I said, my voice getting steadier as anger replaced shock. "When I called Mom 3 weeks ago to tell her I made it to the final interview round, she put me on hold to take a call from her book club. When I texted the family group chat that I'd been interviewing for senior positions, Jake responded with a meme about cats. 'We've been busy,' Dad started. 'But you're not too busy to have my new salary already divvied up between yourselves.' I pulled out my phone and opened the calculator app. Let's see. Mom wants help with mortgage payments. Let's call that $1,800 a month. Emma's loan payoff at $47,000. Jake's car at $32,000. Dad's kitchen renovation at $15,000. That's $94,000 up front, plus ongoing mortgage help." I looked up at their expectant faces. "My raise is $28,000 a year. Before taxes. You've already spent 3 years of my increase in the span of a 5-minute conversation. You don't have to pay for everything at once," Emma said, like she was being reasonable. "We can work out payment plans." "Payment plans." I repeated the word slowly. "Emma, when's the last time you paid me back for anything?" "That's different. When I lent you $800 for your security deposit 2 years ago, you said you'd pay me back in 3 months. I'm still waiting." Her cheeks flushed. "I've been struggling with my entry-level salary. And Jake, that emergency $400 I sent you last Christmas for car repairs. I saw the PlayStation 5 in your Instagram stories 2 days later. Still have the screenshots." Jake had the decency to look away. "I got a good deal on it. And Mom." I turned to face her directly. "The $1,200 I've sent you over the past 6 months for various emergencies. How much of that went to actual emergencies versus your weekly shopping trips to Target?" Mom's mouth opened and closed like a fish. "That's not fair. You don't understand the pressures of maintaining a household. I understand that you bought a $300 coffee maker last month while I was living on pasta and hoping my car would pass inspection." The table went quiet except for the sound of Dad's heavy breathing. He was getting that red-faced look he got when someone challenged the family hierarchy. "This is what success does to people," he said, his voice low and dangerous. "Makes them selfish. Makes them forget where they came from." "Where I came from?" I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Dad, where I came from is working at Dairy Queen at 16 so I could buy my own school clothes because you spent your paycheck on a boat you used exactly 3 times. That boat was an investment. That boat was a toy that you made me help pay insurance on while I ate generic cereal for dinner." Emma slammed her hand on the table. "This is ridiculous. We're family. Since when do you keep score in a family?" "Since always, apparently. You guys have been keeping very detailed score of what I owe you. I'm just evening out the math." I stood up, pulling my keys from my pocket. The chair scraped against the floor with a harsh sound that seemed to echo in the sudden silence. "Where are you going?" Mom's voice had gone small, like she was finally realizing this conversation wasn't going according to plan. "Home. To my studio apartment with a broken AC. Thanks for dinner. We're not done talking about this, Dad called after me. I paused at the door, hand on the handle. Yeah, we are. The drive home was a blur of red lights and racing thoughts. My hands were shaking so badly I had to pull over twice just to breathe. By the time I made it to my apartment, my phone was already buzzing with incoming fire. Family group chat, the Hendersons. Asterisk mom, 8:47 p.m. asterisk that was completely inappropriate. We raised you better than that. Asterisk dad, 8:47 p.m. asterisk your mother is crying. Hope you're proud of yourself. Asterisk Emma, 8:49 p.m. asterisk wow. Just wow. I can't believe you'd throw our private family business around like that. Asterisk Jake, 8:52 p.m. asterisk dude what the hell was that about? I turned my phone face down and opened my laptop, but the messages kept coming. The vibration against my coffee table sounded like an angry wasp trapped in a jar. 20 minutes later, my doorbell rang. Through the peephole, I could see Emma standing in the hallway, arms crossed, wearing the same self-righteous expression she perfected in high school when she'd get caught sneaking out and somehow make it mom's fault for not trusting her. I opened the door but didn't invite her in. We need to talk, she said, pushing past me anyway. She surveyed my studio apartment with poorly concealed disgust, the futon that served as both couch and bed, the card table I ate meals on, the single window that overlooked the dumpster behind the Thai restaurant next door. Jesus, this place is depressing. No wonder you're so bitter. Hello to you too, Emma. Make yourself at home. She perched on the edge of my futon like she was afraid she might catch poverty. Look, I get that you're upset about how tonight went down, but you completely overreacted. Mom had to take a Xanax. Mom takes Xanax when her favorite reality show gets cancelled. That's not exactly my barometer for emotional crisis. You embarrassed her. You embarrassed all of us. Emma's voice took on that wheedling tone she used when she wanted something. We were just excited for you. Maybe we got carried away, but can you blame us? This is the first good news our family has had in months. I sat down in my desk chair, the only other furniture in the room besides the futon and card table. Emma, be honest with me. What was the first thing you thought when I said I got a promotion? She hesitated. I thought it was great that you finally. The first thing. Her shoulders sagged slightly. Okay, fine. I thought about my loans. But that doesn't mean I'm not proud of you. When's the last time you called me just to see how I was doing? Not because you needed money or a favor, just to talk. The question hung in the air. Emma stared at her hands, picking at her nail polish. I've been busy with work and grad school applications. Emma. I don't know, okay? I don't know. Her voice cracked slightly. But that doesn't mean I don't care about you. Doesn't it? Because from where I'm sitting, it feels like the only time any of you remember I exist is when you need something. She looked up at me, and for a moment I saw something that might have been genuine hurt in her eyes. That's not true. Prove it. Tell me one thing about my life right now that isn't related to my job or my bank account. Emma opened her mouth, then closed it. The silence stretched between us like a chasm. I know you like those documentaries. The nature ones. I haven't watched a nature documentary since college, Emma. I don't even have Netflix anymore because I canceled it 8 months ago to save money. She flinched like I'd slapped her. Oh. My phone buzzed again. Another text from Mom, asterisk we need to talk tomorrow. This family is falling apart, asterisk. I showed Emma the screen. She's right about one thing. This family is falling apart. But it's been broken for a long time. Tonight was just the first time anyone noticed. Emma stayed for another 20 minutes, alternating between guilt trips and half-hearted apologies, before finally giving up and leaving. The silence in my apartment felt heavier after she was gone, broken only by the occasional buzz of my phone and the muffled sounds of the Thai restaurant's late dinner rush below. I tried to focus on my laptop, maybe catch up on some coding tutorials or browse job boards out of habit, but my mind kept circling back to the look on my family's faces. Not when I'd called them out, I'd expected anger and defensiveness. It was the confusion that stuck with me. The genuine bewilderment when I'd asked for congratulations, like I'd requested something in a foreign language. My phone rang at 11:30 p.m. Mom's contact photo, a selfie she'd insisted I take of us at last year's Christmas dinner, filled the screen. I let it go to voicemail. Then she called again. And again. On the fourth call, I picked up. Finally. Her voice was thick, like she'd been crying. We need to fix this. There's nothing to fix, Mom. This is just how things are now. Don't you dare take that tone with me. I raised you better than to abandon your family the second you get a little success. I laughed, a sharp sound that surprised even me. A little success. Mom, I've been grinding for 7 years. 7 years of 80-hour weeks, of teaching myself new programming languages on weekends, of taking contract work at night to pay rent. This isn't luck, this is what I earned. And who supported you through all of that? Who believed in you? The question hit like a slap. I stared at the water stain on my ceiling, the one that had been growing larger every time it rained because my landlord refused to fix the roof. You want me to answer that honestly? Of course I do. My coworker Marcus supported me. He's the one who recommended me for this position. My friend Sarah supported me, she's the one who drove me to interviews when my car broke down last year and I couldn't afford the repair. My old professor Dr. Kim supported me by writing recommendation letters and reviewing my portfolio for free. I paused, letting that sink in. You know what you did when I told you I was struggling with imposter syndrome 6 months ago? You said I should be grateful to have a job at all and maybe try being more positive. I was trying to help. No, Mom. You were dismissing me because my problems were inconvenient for you. I heard her sharp intake of breath, then Dad's voice in the background. Is he being reasonable yet? He's being cruel, she said, not bothering to cover the phone. I can hear you both. Dad took the phone. Son, your mother is upset. I think you owe her an apology. For what, exactly? For throwing our private business around. For making her feel bad about asking her own child for help. For acting like you're too good for this family now. I stood up and walked to my window, looking down at the alley where a homeless man was setting up cardboard behind the dumpster. 3 months ago, I'd been one missed paycheck away from being in his position. My family had never once asked about that. Dad, can I ask you something? Do you actually know what my job involves? You work with computers. That's like saying you work with tools. I design software architecture for financial systems. I build the frameworks that handle millions of dollars in transactions. When something breaks, people can lose their life savings. The promotion I got. It means I'm now responsible for systems that manage retirement accounts for over 200,000 people. Silence. I'm trying to help you understand that this isn't just working with computers. This is a career I've built through years of education, training, and sacrifice. That's all very impressive, Dad said, his tone suggesting it was anything but. But at the end of the day, family comes first. That's what we taught you. When did I come first for this family? The question seemed to catch him off guard. What do you mean? When Jake needed money for his security deposit, where did he turn? When Emma's car broke down, who did she call? When you and Mom were behind on bills, who got the guilt trip about family obligation? I've been putting this family first for years. When do I get to come first? That's different. You were the one with steady income. Barely steady. Dad, there were months when helping you guys meant I had to choose between groceries and gas. Did you know that? Did any of you ever ask? Another long pause. Then, we didn't know you were struggling that much. Because you never asked. Because the only time we talk is when someone needs something from me. I could hear Mom crying again in the background, and despite everything, it still made my chest tight. But for the first time in years, I didn't immediately cave to the sound. We'll talk about this tomorrow, Dad said finally. When everyone's had time to cool down. Sure, I said, knowing that tomorrow would just bring more of the same conversation. Good night, Dad. I hung up and turned my phone off completely. The silence that followed felt different now, not heavy with expectation, but clean. Almost peaceful. For the first time in months, I slept through the night. The next morning brought 17 missed calls and 43 text messages. I made coffee with my ancient Mr. Coffee machine and scrolled through them while eating toast that was slightly burned because my toaster only had 2 settings, barely warm and charcoal. Most were variations of the same theme. Mom begging me to come to my senses. Emma alternating between anger and guilt. Jake sending increasingly incoherent messages about how I was being a dick for no reason. But it was the message from my Aunt Carol that made me pause. Asterisk heard about the family drama. Your mom called crying at 6 a.m. She's telling everyone you've cut them off completely and won't help with basic necessities. Just wanted you to know the whole family is talking about it, asterisk. I stared at that message, feeling something cold settle in my stomach. Within 2 hours of our conversation, Mom had already launched a full-scale PR campaign. I could picture her on the phone with Carol, then probably Uncle Pete, maybe my grandparents, spinning the story until I was the ungrateful son who'd abandoned his struggling family in their time of need. My phone rang. Grandma rose. Against my better judgment, I answered. Danny, sweetheart. Her voice was warm but tired. Your mother tells me you had some kind of argument last night. Hi, Grandma. Yeah, something like that. She says you won't help them with the house payment. That you told them to figure it out themselves. There it was. Mom's version of events, where asking for congratulations made me heartless and pointing out their pattern of behavior meant I'd abandoned them entirely. That's not exactly what happened, Grandma. Well, what did happen? Because your mother was sobbing so hard I could barely understand her. I found myself explaining the entire dinner, trying to keep the frustration out of my voice. Grandma Rose had always been fair, the one adult in my family who listened before judging. But even as I talked, I could hear how it sounded. Successful grandson refuses to help struggling family because they didn't congratulate him the right way. When I finished, there was a long pause. Danny, honey, I love you. You know that. I know, Grandma. But maybe you're being a little harsh. Your parents aren't perfect, but they're scared. They've been struggling since your father's hours got cut last year. And Emma, well, those student loans are real. Maybe they went about it wrong, but their need is real too. The guilt hit like a physical weight. This was why their system worked so well, because the need was real. Dad's construction company had been cutting hours. Mom's part-time job at the clinic barely covered groceries. Emma was drowning in debt from a degree she wasn't even using. But then I remembered something. Grandma, didn't Dad buy a new fishing boat last month? Well, yes, but... And didn't Mom just take that weekend trip to Branson with her book club? Silence. I'm not saying their struggles aren't real. But they're asking me to sacrifice my financial stability for theirs while they make choices I can't afford to make for myself. Oh, sweetheart. Grandma's voice got softer. I didn't think about it like that. We talked for another 10 minutes before she had to go, but something in her tone had shifted. She was still worried about the family, but she wasn't trying to convince me to fix everything anymore. 20 minutes after we hung up, my phone buzzed with a text from Emma, asterisk Grandma Rose called Mom back and now she's even more upset. Thanks a lot, asterisk. Then, 5 minutes later, asterisk also Marcus called the house looking for you. Said your phone was going straight to voicemail. Might want to call him back, asterisk. My stomach dropped. Marcus never called my family. The only reason he'd even have their number was from my emergency contacts at work. I called him immediately. Jesus, Dan, finally. I've been trying to reach you since 8 this morning. Marcus sounded stressed. Listen, I don't know what kind of family drama you've got going on, but your mom called the office. She what? She called the main line asking to speak to your supervisor about your promotion. Linda transferred her to me because I'm listed as your reference, but she was going on about how you were making poor decisions and she was concerned about your mental state affecting your work performance. The room started spinning. You've got to be kidding me. I managed to redirect the conversation and told her I'd have you call her, but Dan, she was trying to sabotage your promotion. She actually asked if the company had counseling services for employees who were struggling with success. I sat down hard on my futon, feeling like I'd been punched in the gut. My own mother had called my workplace to undermine me. The promotion I'd worked 7 years for, the one that finally gave me financial breathing room, and she tried to jeopardize it because I wouldn't immediately hand over my salary increase. Linda's discreet, but word travels fast around here, Marcus continued. You need to get ahead of this before it becomes a bigger problem. After I hung up, I sat staring at my phone for a long time. The messages kept coming, more guilt, more manipulation, more demands disguised as family obligation. But now there was something else underneath my hurt, a cold, clear anger that cut through all the emotional noise. They weren't just asking for money anymore. They were actively trying to destroy the thing I'd worked hardest for. Game over. I called in sick to work, the first time in 3 years, and spent Tuesday morning doing something I'd never thought I'd need to do, documenting every financial transaction I'd made with my family over the past 2 years. Bank statements, Venmo transfers, Cash App receipts. I even found old texts where they'd ask for money, promise to pay me back, then ask for more before the first loan was repaid. By noon, I had a spreadsheet that made my stomach turn, $8,347 in loans and emergencies over 24 months. Total amount repaid, $0. The number stared back at me from my laptop screen like an accusation. $8,000. That was 4 months of rent. That was the down payment on a reliable car. That was the emergency fund I'd never been able to build because every time I scraped together a few $100s, someone in my family had a crisis. My phone had been mercifully quiet since Marcus's call, but at 12:47 p.m., it exploded with activity. Emma, then Jake, then Mom, all calling within minutes of each other. I let them go to voicemail and listened to the messages on speaker. Emma's voice was tight with barely controlled panic. Danny, you need to call Mom back right now. She's talking about driving to your office to straighten this whole thing out. I told her that was insane, but she's not listening to me. Please just call her. Jake's message was shorter. Dude, Mom's lost it. She keeps saying you're having some kind of breakdown and she needs to save you from yourself. This is getting weird, man. But it was Mom's voicemail that made my blood run cold. Danny, I know you're angry with us, but I cannot stand by and watch you destroy your career over hurt feelings. I raised you better than this. If you won't answer your phone, I'll have to take more drastic measures. A mother doesn't give up on her child, even when that child has given up on his family. I called Emma back immediately. Thank God, she answered on the first ring. You have to talk to Mom. She's been pacing around the house for 2 hours muttering about interventions and tough love. She thinks you're having some kind of mental health crisis. Emma, she called my office yesterday trying to sabotage my promotion. Silence. Then, what? She called my supervisor and told them she was concerned about my mental state affecting my work performance. She tried to convince them I couldn't handle the promotion. That's... Emma's voice trailed off. That's actually crazy. Like, actually insane behavior. Yeah. And now she's threatening to show up at my workplace to save me from myself. Oh my God. I could hear Emma moving around, probably pacing just like Mom. Danny, you have to understand, she's not thinking clearly. Dad's been feeding into this, telling her that you've been corrupted by money and that the family needs to bring you back to your roots before you lose yourself completely. Bring me back to my roots. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. My roots are working 3 jobs to pay for textbooks while Dad bought toys we couldn't afford. I know. Look, I'm not defending them. What Mom did was completely out of line. But she's genuinely convinced that you've changed, that success has made you cruel. She keeps talking about how you attacked the family unprovoked and how she's worried about your soul. Through Emma's phone, I could hear Mom's voice in the background, getting louder. Is that him? Give me the phone. I need to talk to my son. I have to go, Emma said quickly. But Danny, maybe stay away from your apartment tonight. And definitely don't go to work tomorrow if you can avoid it. Let me try to talk her down first. The line went dead. I stared at my phone, trying to process what was happening. In less than 48 hours, asking my family for basic recognition had somehow escalated to them actively sabotaging my career and planning some kind of intervention for my money-corrupted soul. My phone buzzed with a text from Jake, * Mom just left. Said she was going to handle this properly. Didn't say where she was going, but she was dressed up like she was going somewhere important. Thought you should know, *. I looked at the clock, 2:15 p.m. If she was planning to show up at my office, she'd be there in 20 minutes. I grabbed my keys and headed for the door. It was time to get ahead of this situation before my mother could do any more damage to the life I'd spent 7 years building. I made it to the office parking lot just as Mom's burgundy Camry was pulling into a visitor spot. Through her windshield, I could see her checking her makeup in the rearview mirror, smoothing down her hair. She was wearing her good blouse, the navy blue one she saved for parent-teacher conferences and church functions. The one that meant serious business. My hands were shaking as I called Marcus. She's here, I said when he picked up. My mom. She's in the parking lot right now, and she's dressed like she's going to a job interview. Shit. Okay, where are you? Parking lot 2. I can see her from here. I watched Mom gather her purse and what looked like a manila folder. Marcus, she brought paperwork. What kind of paperwork could she possibly? He paused. Dan, get up here. Now. Come through the back entrance near the loading dock. I'll meet you at the elevator. I hung up and started moving, keeping low behind the parked cars. Like I was stalking my own mother. The absurdity of it would have been funny if my career wasn't potentially hanging in the balance. The back elevator felt like it took forever. When the doors finally opened on the 4th floor, Marcus was waiting with Linda Chen, our department director. Linda's expression was carefully neutral, but I could see the concern in her eyes. Daniel, she said quietly. We need to talk. Conference room 3. Through the glass walls of the conference room, I could see the main reception area. Mom was already at the front desk, folder open, gesturing animatedly at Janet, our receptionist. Janet kept glancing toward the elevators with increasingly wide eyes. She's been here for 8 minutes, Linda said, closing the conference room door behind us. She told Janet she was here for a family emergency consultation regarding your fitness for the promotion. My fitness? Marcus pulled out his phone and showed me a recording app. I started recording when Janet called up. Your mom has been explaining to anyone who'll listen that you've changed drastically since receiving the promotion news and that she's concerned you're making decisions that could harm both yourself and the company. On the other side of the glass, I watched Mom pull what looked like printed emails from her folder and spread them on the reception counter. What are those? I asked, though I had a sinking feeling I already knew. Linda's expression tightened. She says they're examples of your recent erratic communication with family members. Apparently she wants to show them to HR as evidence of concerning behavioral changes. The bottom dropped out of my stomach. She printed our text exchanges. The argument from dinner, probably my responses to their money requests, maybe even private conversations I'd had with Emma or Jake. All taken out of context and presented as evidence that I was having some kind of breakdown. This is insane, I said, but my voice came out weaker than I intended. She's literally trying to sabotage my job because I wouldn't give her mortgage money. We know, Marcus said. But Dan, she's being very convincing. She's not coming across as angry or vindictive. She seems genuinely worried. Like a concerned mother who's watching her son spiral. Through the glass, I could see Mom dabbing at her eyes with a tissue while Janet looked increasingly uncomfortable. She'd always been good at this, the performance of maternal concern. I'd watched her do it with teachers when Jake got in trouble, with neighbors when Dad's drinking became obvious, with her own siblings when she needed to borrow money. What's she saying exactly? I asked. Linda consulted her notes. That you've become aggressive and hostile toward family members. That you've cut off all financial support without warning, even for basic necessities. That you've started keeping detailed records of family interactions in a way that seems obsessive and calculating. My spreadsheet. Somehow she knew about my spreadsheet. She also mentioned that you've isolated yourself from family support systems and that your living conditions have deteriorated to the point where she's concerned about your mental health. My living conditions. Apparently your sister described your apartment to her. The broken appliances, the furniture situation. Marcus looked uncomfortable. Dan, I've been to your place. It's not great, but we all knew you were struggling financially. In context, it makes sense. But if someone didn't know that context, it would look like a successful software engineer choosing to live in squalor. Like someone whose judgment couldn't be trusted. She's thought this through, I said, more to myself than to them. This isn't a panicked reaction. She's built a case. Linda nodded grimly. A surprisingly thorough one. She's requesting a meeting with HR and your direct supervisor to discuss implementing a gradual transition for your new responsibilities while you work through these personal challenges. I watched Mom accept a cup of water from Janet, continuing to dab at her eyes. She looked like exactly what she was pretending to be, a worried mother trying to save her son from himself. What do I do? I asked. Well, Linda said carefully, the good news is that none of this affects your technical qualifications or work performance. Your promotion was based on merit, and nothing she's saying changes that. But HR is going to want to investigate any concerns about employee wellness, especially for someone in a senior position. They'll probably want to schedule a meeting with you, possibly recommend counseling services. My phone buzzed. A text from Emma, * Mom's been planning this since yesterday. Found printed Google searches on her desk about signs of money addiction and corporate responsibility for employee mental health. Get out of there, *. I showed them the text. Marcus swore under his breath. She researched this, he said. She actually looked up how to frame this properly. Through the glass, Mom was now talking to someone in a suit, probably someone from HR who'd come down to handle the situation. She was pointing to her folder, to the printed emails, her expression the picture of maternal anguish. My career, my promotion, my escape from years of financial struggle, all of it balanced on the edge of a knife because I'd asked for congratulations instead of immediately offering up my salary. I need to get ahead of this, I said, standing up. Before she controls the entire narrative. But as I watched my mother perform concern for an audience of my coworkers, I realized she'd already won the first round. The question was whether I could salvage the rest. I walked out of that conference room with Linda's words echoing in my head, be prepared to defend yourself professionally, but don't let this become a he said she said family drama in our workplace. Too late for that advice. By the time I made it to my desk, Mom had been escorted to HR's office on the second floor. Through the office gossip network that moved faster than our internal email system, I learned she'd brought a 3-page timeline documenting my behavioral decline over the past 6 months. Dates, specific incidents, even screenshots of my Venmo transactions showing erratic spending patterns. The woman had built a dossier on me like I was a corporate security threat. My phone rang. Emma, calling from what sounded like her car. Danny, you need to know what's in that folder, she said without preamble. I went through Mom's desk after she left. She's got everything. Screenshots of your texts complaining about being broke. Bank statements she somehow got hold of showing your account balances. She even printed out your LinkedIn profile updates from the past year as evidence of you becoming obsessed with career advancement. How did she get my bank statements? I don't know, but there's more. She called Dr. Peterson. My stomach lurched. Dr. Peterson was the family therapist we'd seen exactly twice when my parents were going through their rough patch 3 years ago. She called him about what? She scheduled an appointment for Friday. For the whole family. She told his office you were having a success-induced psychological crisis and that we needed professional intervention. I sank into my desk chair, staring at my dual monitors displaying the financial software architecture I'd spent months perfecting. The irony wasn't lost on me. I was responsible for protecting millions of dollars in other people's money, but my own mother thought I was too mentally unstable to handle my $28,000 raise. Emma, I need you to tell me the truth about something. Okay. Did you give her information about my apartment? Specific details about my living situation. A pause. Then, she asked how you were doing after you left Sunday dinner. I was worried about you, so I mentioned that your place was pretty bare bones and that you'd been struggling more than we realized. And you told her about my broken appliances. The furniture situation. I was trying to make her feel bad for pressuring you about money. Emma's voice got smaller. I didn't know she was going to weaponize it. Another call was coming through, Marcus. I have to go, I told Emma. But Emma. Don't tell her anything else about me. Nothing. I switched to Marcus. How bad is it? HR wants to see you in 20 minutes. And Dan. They're taking this seriously. Sharon Morrison is handling it personally. Sharon Morrison. The HR director who'd fired 3 people last year for various wellness-related issues. She didn't mess around when it came to anything that might create liability for the company. What's my play here? Complete honesty. Don't try to minimize or explain away your family situation. Just be straightforward about what actually happened and let your work record speak for itself. I hung up and spent 15 minutes writing down a timeline of my own, every family loan, every guilt trip, every time I'd sacrificed my own financial stability for their emergencies. If Mom wanted to play with documentation, I'd show them what real records looked like. Walking into that HR office felt like entering a courtroom where I was both defendant and prosecutor. Sharon Morrison sat behind her desk with Mom's manila folder open in front of her. My mother occupied one of the chairs across from the desk, her tissue box strategically positioned, her concerned parent expression perfectly calibrated. Daniel, Sharon said without looking up from the folder. Your mother has brought some concerns to our attention regarding your recent behavioral changes and their potential impact on your new role responsibilities. I remained standing. I'd like to respond to those concerns. Of course. But first, I want you to understand that this isn't disciplinary. We're simply trying to ensure that all our employees, especially those in senior positions, have the support they need to succeed. The corporate speak translated roughly to, we're not firing you yet, but we're definitely questioning your fitness for the promotion. I appreciate that, I said. But I think there's been a fundamental misunderstanding about the situation. Mom shifted in her chair, preparing to interrupt, but I kept talking. The behavioral changes my mother is referring to stem from a conversation Sunday evening where I asked my family to congratulate me on my promotion before immediately requesting specific dollar amounts totaling over $94,000. Sharon's eyebrows went up slightly. She glanced at Mom's folder, then back at me. I have documentation here, I continued, pulling out my own printed timeline, showing $8,347 in family loans over the past 2 years, none of which have been repaid, often requested during periods when I was financially struggling myself. I set my papers on Sharon's desk. The erratic behavior my mother is concerned about is me saying no to additional financial requests and asking for basic acknowledgement of my professional achievements. For the first time since I'd entered the room, Mom spoke up. You see, she said, her voice breaking perfectly. This is exactly what I'm talking about. He's keeping score now. Tracking every dollar, every interaction. This isn't the son I raised. Sharon looked between us, then down at both sets of documents. The silence stretched until my palms started sweating. Finally, she spoke, Mrs. Henderson, I think we need to discuss what constitutes appropriate workplace intervention. The next 20 minutes felt like the longest performance review of my life, except instead of discussing my code quality and project deliverables, I was defending my sanity to HR while my mother sat 3 feet away treating my personal boundaries like symptoms of a mental breakdown. Sharon Morrison had that look that seasoned HR directors perfect over years of handling workplace drama, professionally skeptical but not unsympathetic. She'd been flipping between Mom's folder and my documentation, asking pointed questions that made it clear she'd dealt with family interference before. Mrs. Henderson, Sharon said, setting down Mom's printed screenshots, when you mention your concern about Daniel's isolation from family support systems, can you be more specific about what that looked like before this week? Mom dabbed at her eyes again. Well, he used to call regularly, check in on us. He was always willing to help when we had emergencies. But lately, he's been distant. Cold. And then Sunday night, he just exploded at us for no reason. No reason, I repeated flatly. You had my salary increase allocated to 4 different expenses before I'd even finished telling you about the promotion. We were excited for you. You were excited about what I could do for you. There's a difference. Sharon held up a hand. Daniel, let me ask you this directly. Have you made any statements to your family about cutting off financial support permanently? I thought about my exact words Sunday night. I told them we were done talking about money. I didn't say permanently, but I also didn't give them a timeline for when I might reconsider. And the living conditions your mother mentioned, the broken appliances, minimal furniture. Can you explain those? I've been living paycheck to paycheck for 2 years while helping them with emergencies. My AC broke in July, and instead of fixing it, I sent my mom $300 for her electric bill. My refrigerator runs intermittently because when it first started acting up, my brother needed $400 for what he said was a car repair. Sharon made notes. So these conditions are directly related to the financial assistance you've been providing? Yes. Every time I saved enough to improve my living situation, someone in my family had a crisis that somehow became my responsibility to solve. Mom's tissue dabbing intensified. You make it sound like we were taking advantage of you. We're family. Family helps family. Family also congratulates family. Family also asks how you're doing instead of jumping straight to how much you can spare. I turned to look at her directly. When's the last time you called me just to see how I was, Mom? Not because you needed something, just to talk. The question hung in the air like a challenge. Mom's mouth opened and closed, but no sound came out. Sharon was watching this exchange with obvious interest. Mrs. Henderson, in your interactions with Daniel over the past 6 months, how often would you say the conversations involved requests for financial assistance? That's not. I mean, we don't just talk about money. But approximately how often? Half the time. More than half. Mom looked trapped. We've been struggling since his father's hours got cut. When you're worried about losing your house, of course money comes up in conversations. But not in this office, Sharon said firmly. Mrs. Henderson, while I appreciate your concern for your son, Daniel's personal financial decisions, including how much he chooses to share with family members, are not workplace issues unless they directly impact his job performance. But they are impacting his performance, Mom insisted. He's becoming obsessive, calculating. The son I raised would never track family interactions on spreadsheets like we're business transactions. Sharon looked at me. You created spreadsheets tracking family financial interactions. Yesterday, after my mother called this office trying to sabotage my promotion. I documented every loan and request from the past 2 years to understand exactly how much of my financial instability was self-imposed versus situational. And what did you find? That I've been subsidizing their lifestyle choices while living like a college student. That I've enabled their poor financial decisions by always being their backup plan. Mom stood up abruptly. I can't listen to this anymore. This isn't my son talking. Success has poisoned him. Success hasn't poisoned me, Mom. It's just given me options I've never had before. Including the option to say no. Sharon closed both folders and leaned back in her chair. Mrs. Henderson, I'm going to be direct with you. Nothing you've shown me today indicates that Daniel is unfit for his promotion or struggling with his work responsibilities. What it shows is a family financial dynamic that's changing, and that's not something we can or should try to manage in a corporate setting. But he's not thinking clearly. He's thinking clearly enough to document his concerns, communicate his boundaries, and show up to work prepared to defend his position professionally. Those are exactly the kinds of analytical and communication skills we promoted him for. I felt something loosen in my chest for the first time since walking into this room. I'm going to ask you to leave now, Sharon continued. And Mrs. Henderson. I need to be clear that any future contact with this office regarding Daniel's personal life will be considered harassment. Mom gathered her folder with shaking hands, shooting me a look that was equal parts hurt and fury. This isn't over, Danny. Family doesn't just disappear because you don't want to deal with it anymore. She left without another word, her heels clicking against the tile floor like an angry countdown. Sharon waited until the door closed completely before speaking again. Daniel, off the record. Your mother is scared. She's losing her financial safety net, and she's lashing out. But that's not your problem to solve, especially not at the expense of your career. Is my promotion still secure? Your promotion was never in jeopardy. But I am going to recommend that you document any further family interference with your work. If this escalates, we'll need a clear paper trail. I walked out of that office feeling like I'd won a battle I'd never wanted to fight. But as I settled back at my desk and saw 17 new messages on my phone, I realized the war was just getting started. The messages were worse than I'd expected. My phone had become a weapon of mass guilt, each notification another incoming missile of family outrage. The first few were predictable, Mom sobbing about how I'd humiliated her in front of strangers, Emma demanding I fix this mess, Jake calling me everything but my actual name. But then I got to the one that made my blood freeze. Asterisk dad, for 47 p.m. Asterisk your mother is in the ER. Hope you're proud of yourself. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely dial Emma's number. She picked up on the first ring. Finally, she snapped. Mom collapsed in a parking garage after leaving your office. They think it's her blood pressure, but... Is she okay? She's stable, but Danny, this is serious. The doctors are asking about stress factors, and Dad told them all about how you've been psychologically abusing the family. I closed my eyes, feeling the familiar trap closing around me. Even when I was right, even when I had documentation and witnesses, somehow I was still the villain. Emma, she brought a dossier to my workplace trying to get me demoted. That's not normal behavior. I know, okay. I know it was crazy. But she's in the hospital now, and the whole family is here, and everyone's talking about how this all started because you couldn't just help with the mortgage. Through my office window, I could see the parking garage where Mom had collapsed. The space where her car had been parked was now occupied by a Honda Civic, like nothing had happened at all. Which hospital? I asked, already knowing I was about to make a mistake. Mercy General. Room 314. But Danny? Dad is really angry. Like, scary angry. He's been telling everyone who'll listen that you've abandoned the family, and some of the relatives are starting to believe him. I looked at my computer screen, where 3 different coding projects waited for my attention. My promotion, the thing I'd worked 7 years to achieve, was sitting there ready for me to prove I deserved it. But instead, I was about to walk into another emotional minefield because my mother's blood pressure couldn't handle the stress of losing her personal ATM. I'll be there in 30 minutes, I said. Marcus appeared at my cubicle as I was packing up my laptop. Please tell me you're not going to the hospital. She's in the ER because of stress I caused. She's in the ER because of stress she caused herself by trying to sabotage your job. There's a difference. He sat on the edge of my desk, blocking my path. Dan, this is textbook manipulation. Create a crisis, make yourself the victim, force the other person to cave out of guilt. What if it's not manipulation? What if she actually had a medical emergency because of the stress? Then she should have thought about that before calling your office with a folder full of fake evidence. Marcus pulled out his phone. Look, my girlfriend's a nurse at Mercy General. Let me text her, see if she can find out what's actually going on before you walk into whatever ambush your dad has planned. 5 minutes later, his phone buzzed. Marcus read the message, then looked at me with an expression somewhere between sympathy and exasperation. Blood pressure spike, probably stress-related, but not dangerous. They're keeping her for observation, but she's been texting on her phone and complaining about the food quality. Jess says she's asking the nurses if they think her son is mentally stable enough for a high-pressure job. Even from a hospital bed, Mom was still working the angles. She's literally polling the medical staff about your fitness for employment, Marcus continued. This isn't a woman who's had a breakdown. This is a woman who's doubling down. My phone rang. Unknown number, but with a local area code. Danny Henderson. This is Dr. Peterson's office. Your mother scheduled an emergency family session for Friday evening. She said you were experiencing a crisis and needed immediate intervention. Can you confirm your availability? The family therapist. She was still orchestrating her intervention from the ER. I'll need to call you back, I said, hanging up quickly. Marcus was staring at me. Who was that? The therapist Mom contacted. They want to schedule an emergency session because I'm apparently having a crisis. You know what you're having? Boundaries. For the first time in your adult life, you're having actual boundaries, and your family can't handle it. I looked at my phone, where new messages were still coming in. Aunt Carol asking what was wrong with me. Uncle Pete suggesting I needed to man up and take care of family. My grandmother asking if I'd pray about softening my heart. The whole extended family was being mobilized, and I was losing the narrative war badly. I have to go to the hospital, I said finally. Not because I'm giving in, but because I need to control this story before Dad convinces everyone I'm some kind of sociopath. Marcus shook his head. Just remember, you can't reason with people who are determined to misunderstand you. As I drove toward Mercy General, I realized he was probably right. But I had to try anyway. The hospital smelled like disinfectant and bad decisions. I found room 314 easily enough, just followed the sound of Dad's voice carrying down the hallway, loud enough that nurses kept glancing toward Mom's door with annoyed expressions. Complete personality change. Won't even help his own mother with basic necessities. We're talking about losing the house, and he's worried about congratulations. I paused outside the door, listening to him hold court with what sounded like half our extended family. Through the small window, I could see Mom propped up in bed, looking pale but alert, nodding along as Dad painted me as the villain in this story. The boys lost his way, Uncle Pete's voice chimed in. Success went to his head. It's that job, Aunt Carol added. All that computer work, sitting alone all day. Makes people cold. I took a deep breath and walked in. The conversation stopped like someone had hit a mute button. Mom looked up at me with red-rimmed eyes that might have been from crying or might have been from the fluorescent lighting. Danny. You came. Of course I came, Mom. How are you feeling? Dad stepped between us before I could get closer to the bed. Now you want to play the concerned son? After what you put her through? What I put her through? I looked around the room at the assembled jury of relatives. Dad, she showed up at my workplace with printed bank statements and tried to convince my boss I was mentally unstable. Because you are acting unstable, he shot back. Look at this family. Look what you've done to us. Grandma Rose spoke up from her chair in the corner. Danny, sweetheart, we've all been talking, and we think maybe you should consider that therapist your mother mentioned. Just to work through some of these feelings. What feelings, exactly? The anger, Mom said weakly from her hospital bed. The resentment toward your family. It's not healthy, keeping score like that. I pulled out my phone and opened my notes app, where I'd been tracking the messages I'd received since leaving work. Speaking of keeping score, let me read you some of the texts I got in the past 2 hours. Danny, don't, Emma started, but I was already reading. Jake, 5:23 p.m., hope you're happy, Mom's in the hospital because of your selfishness. Dad, 5:31 p.m., your mother could have died because you chose money over family. Aunt Carol, 5:45 p.m., your mother raised you better than this, you should be ashamed. I looked up at their faces. 17 messages in total, all blaming me for Mom's medical emergency. But I'm the one keeping score. Uncle Pete stood up from his chair. You're twisting this around. Your mother was trying to help you, and you embarrassed her. Help me how? By calling my employer and trying to sabotage my promotion. She was worried about you, Aunt Carol insisted. She said you've been living like a homeless person while hoarding money. Hoarding money. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. I've been living like a broke person because every time I save anything, someone in this room has an emergency that becomes my problem. Mom's monitor started beeping faster. You see, she said, her voice getting breathier. This is what I mean. The hostility, the blame. This isn't my son. A nurse appeared in the doorway. I need to ask some of you to step out. The patient needs to stay calm. He's upsetting her, Dad said immediately, pointing at me. He should be the one to leave. The nurse looked between us, clearly uncomfortable with the family drama playing out in her medical facility. Actually, I need everyone except immediate family to step out for now. Uncle Pete, Aunt Carol, and my grandmother reluctantly filed out, but not before Grandma Rose pressed a folded piece of paper into my hand. Think about what I wrote, sweetheart. When the room cleared down to just Mom, Dad, Emma, Jake, and me, the silence felt heavier somehow. More focused. The nurse said you've been asking the staff about my mental health, I said to Mom. Even from a hospital bed, you're still trying to build a case against me. I'm worried about you, she whispered. This obsession with money, with keeping records of every family interaction. It's not normal. You want to know what's not normal? Having your mother show up at your job with a dossier like you're a security threat. Jake shifted uncomfortably. Look, maybe everyone just needs to calm down, Anne. No, I cut him off. We're not calming down and pretending this is normal family drama. Mom researched how to get me demoted. She called a therapist and scheduled an intervention. She's been building a narrative where I'm the crazy one for wanting basic respect. I unfolded Grandma Rose's note, asterisk, pride comes before a fall. Your family needs you now more than ever. Don't let success make you forget who you are. Love, Grandma asterisk. Even Grandma thinks I've been corrupted by money, I said, showing them the note. Because apparently wanting to be congratulated before being asked for $94,000 makes me prideful. Mom's monitor beeped again, and she closed her eyes dramatically. I can't handle this stress, Danny. The doctor said I need to avoid confrontation. And there it was. The perfect trap. Continue defending myself and risk making her sicker. Back down and validate their narrative that I was the problem. I looked at their expectant faces and realized something that should have been obvious from the beginning. I was never going to win this argument because they needed me to be wrong more than they needed to be right. I made my decision in that antiseptic-scented hospital room, surrounded by the people who were supposed to love me unconditionally but had somehow turned my success into their crisis. You're right, Mom, I said quietly. You can't handle this stress. So I'm going to remove myself as a source of it. Dad's eyes narrowed. What's that supposed to mean? It means I'm done. Not just with the money requests, not just with the guilt trips. I'm done with all of it. I pulled out my phone and opened the family group chat. I'm going to make this really simple for everyone. My fingers moved across the screen while they watched, effective immediately. I'm stepping back from family financial arrangements and family gatherings until further notice. This isn't about anger or punishment. This is about protecting my mental health and career from further interference. I hope mom recovers quickly. I won't be responding to messages or calls for the foreseeable future. Asterisk. The notification sounds from their phones created a weird electronic harmony in the quiet room. You can't just quit the family, Emma said, staring at her screen in disbelief. Watch me. Jake stood up, his face flushed. This is insane, man. You're going nuclear over some stupid argument about money. This stopped being about money the moment mom called my office. This became about whether I have the right to basic boundaries without being treated like I'm having a mental breakdown. Mom struggled to sit up straighter in her hospital bed. Danny, please. Think about what you're doing. Family is forever. Jobs come and go, but family. Family doesn't try to sabotage your career because you won't immediately fork over your raise. I was surprised by how calm my voice sounded. Family doesn't create dossiers about your mental health. Family doesn't mobilize 3 generations of relatives to guilt you into compliance. Dad stepped closer, his voice dropping to that dangerous register I remembered from childhood arguments. You walk away from this family, and don't come crawling back when your fancy job doesn't work out. Don't come crying to us when you realize money can't replace the people who actually love you. The people who actually love me congratulated me on my promotion before asking what was in it for them. I turned to leave, but Emma grabbed my arm. Danny, wait. What about Christmas? What about birthdays? You can't just disappear. I'm not disappearing. I'm protecting myself from people who see my success as their opportunity and my boundaries as my mental illness. But we're family, she said again, like it was a magic word that should override everything else. Being family means more than shared DNA, Emma. It means actually caring about each other's well-being. When's the last time any of you asked how I was doing without needing something from me? The silence stretched long enough that Mom's heart monitor became the loudest sound in the room. That's what I thought. I made it to the parking garage before my hands started shaking. 17 years of family gatherings, of being the reliable one, of putting everyone else's emergencies ahead of my own needs, and I just walked away from all of it in less than 10 minutes. My phone was already buzzing with incoming calls. Emma. Jake. A number I didn't recognize that was probably one of the aunts or uncles. I turned it off and sat in my car, staring at the hospital entrance where my family was probably already strategizing their next move. For the first time in my adult life, I was completely on my own. It should have felt terrifying. Instead, it felt like I could finally breathe. The freedom lasted exactly 36 hours. I spent Wednesday in blissful silence, phone still turned off, diving into my new senior architect responsibilities like they were a lifeline. Marcus brought me coffee and updates. Your family called the main office 4 more times, but otherwise left me alone to code in peace. For the first time in months, I worked late not because I was avoiding home, but because I was actually excited about what I was building. Thursday morning shattered that illusion. I turned my phone back onto 17 voicemails and 43 text messages, but it was the email waiting in my work inbox that made my stomach drop. From *Peterson.familytherapy@gmail.com. To *Denderson@techcorp.com. Subject *urgent, family crisis intervention required. Sent Wednesday, 11:47 p.m. Dear Mr. Henderson. Your mother has provided compelling evidence of a family mental health crisis that requires immediate professional intervention. Based on our preliminary consultation and the documentation she's shared, I'm deeply concerned about the psychological deterioration she's described. I've had 40 years of experience with success-induced personality disorders, and the behavioral patterns your family has documented align with several concerning diagnostic markers. I'm writing to you directly because your mother believes you may not be capable of recognizing the severity of your condition. I've scheduled an emergency evaluation for Friday at 6 p.m. Your mother has indicated this may be our only opportunity to intervene before you cause irreparable damage to yourself and your family relationships. Please understand that untreated success syndrome can lead to complete social isolation, paranoid thinking, and eventual career self-sabotage. The very fact that you've cut off family communication suggests we may already be in advanced stages. I hope you'll consider this opportunity for healing. Dr. Richard Peterson, LMFT. I read it 3 times before the full implications hit me. Mom had convinced a licensed therapist that I was mentally ill. She'd shown him her carefully curated evidence, my obsessive record-keeping, my deteriorating living conditions, my hostile rejection of family support, and he bought it completely. Worse, he diagnosed me via email based entirely on her narrative. I forwarded the email to Marcus, then called the number listed in Dr. Peterson's signature. Peterson Family Therapy, this is Janet. Hi, this is Daniel Henderson. I received an email from Dr. Peterson about a family session, and I need to clarify some things about the information he's been given. Oh yes, Mr. Henderson. Your mother has been very concerned about you. Dr. Peterson spent 2 hours with your family yesterday reviewing the documentation. Can we confirm you for Friday at 6? What documentation, specifically? Papers rustled in the background. Let's see, financial records showing erratic spending, text message exchanges demonstrating hostile communication patterns, photographs of your living conditions, and testimony from multiple family members about behavioral changes following your recent promotion. Photographs of my living conditions. They'd been to my apartment. Janet, I need to speak with Dr. Peterson directly. There's been a serious misunderstanding. I'm sorry, but Dr. Peterson only speaks with patients during scheduled appointments. Would you like me to move your family session to earlier in the week? I'm not his patient. I never consented to treatment. A pause. Mr. Henderson, your mother has legal documentation showing you're not currently capable of making sound decisions about your mental health care. Peterson is prepared to recommend involuntary evaluation if necessary. The line went dead, leaving me staring at my phone in complete shock. Legal documentation. Involuntary evaluation. My hands were shaking as I called Emma. Thank God you're finally calling someone back, she answered. Danny, this has gotten completely out of control. Dad hired a lawyer. He what? After you left the hospital, he was so angry he called Tom Brewster, you remember, Jake's friend who became a lawyer? Dad's trying to figure out if they can have you declared mentally incompetent. The office suddenly felt too small, like the walls were closing in. Emma, please tell me you're not supporting this. I don't know what to support anymore. Mom's been showing everyone those photos of your apartment, and honestly, Danny, it looks bad. Like, really bad. Combined with the money obsession and the way you exploded at everyone. What photos? When were they in my apartment? Silence. Emma. When were they in my apartment? Jake still has your spare key. From when he helped you move in 2 years ago. My blood turned to ice. They broke into my apartment. It wasn't breaking in, you gave Jake the key. 2 years ago, for emergencies. Not so you could stage a photo shoot of my poverty for a therapist. I was pacing now, my voice getting loud enough that coworkers were starting to glance over. Emma, that's illegal. That's literally breaking and entering. They were worried about you. They were building a case against me. There's a difference. I grabbed my jacket and headed for the elevator. What did they photograph? Just the general state of things. The broken AC unit, the card table, your refrigerator with the duct tape on the door. Danny, when you see it all laid out like that, it really does look like you're having some kind of breakdown. The elevator felt like it was moving in slow motion. Or it looks like someone who's been financially supporting 4 other adults while living on entry-level salary for 2 years. The lawyer says they might be able to get temporary guardianship if Dr. Peterson confirms the mental health concerns. Just until you get back on track. I nearly dropped my phone. Guardianship? Emma, do you understand what that means? They could control my bank account, my medical decisions, where I live. They could literally take away my promotion. Only if you really are having problems. I'm having problems because my family hired a lawyer to have me declared incompetent after breaking into my apartment to take photos for a therapist I never agreed to see. I was shouting now, and the elevator seemed to echo my voice back at me. How is that not insane to you? Because Mom ended up in the hospital, Danny. Because you've cut off all communication. Because normal people don't make spreadsheets about their family relationships. The elevator doors opened in a parking garage, and I headed straight for my car. Normal families don't try to sabotage their son's career because he won't hand over his paycheck. That's not what happened. That's exactly what happened. And now, instead of admitting they were wrong, they're doubling down by trying to have me committed. I hung up and drove straight to my apartment, running red lights and taking corners too fast. The parking lot looked normal, but when I got to my door, I could see fresh scuff marks around the lock. The spare key Jake had was supposed to be for emergencies, I'd completely forgotten he even had it. Inside, everything looked the same but felt different. Violated. I started noticing things. My laptop had been moved slightly on the card table. The refrigerator door was closed, but the duct tape I'd used to keep it sealed was positioned differently. Someone had been through my space, documenting my broken possessions like evidence at a crime scene. My phone rang. Marcus. Where the hell are you? Linda's been looking for you, and there's some guy here asking questions about your mental state. What guy? Says he's a private investigator working on a family welfare case. He's been asking Janet about your work performance, whether you've seemed erratic or obsessive lately. They'd hired a PI. My own family had hired a private investigator. Marcus, I need you to tell Linda I'm taking a personal day. Maybe the rest of the week. Dan, whatever's happening, running away isn't going to fix it. I'm not running away. I'm regrouping. I was already pulling clothes into a duffel bag. They broke into my apartment, Marcus. They photographed my stuff to show a therapist as evidence I'm mentally ill. Jesus Christ. Where are you going to go? I paused, realizing I had no idea. Every hotel would create a paper trail they could follow. I couldn't go to any mutual friends, they'd call those people too. I'll figure it out. Just buy me some time at work, okay? What about the guardianship thing? You can't just ignore legal proceedings. I'm not ignoring it. I'm getting ahead of it. I hung up and made one more call, to the only lawyer I knew who wasn't friends with my family. Sarah Chen had been my study partner in college before she went to law school. We'd kept in touch sporadically over the years, mostly LinkedIn congratulations and birthday texts. But she was smart, ruthless when she needed to be, and best of all, she'd never met my family. Danny Henderson, she answered on the second ring. This is unexpected. How are you? I need a lawyer, Sarah. Like, immediately. My family is trying to have me declared mentally incompetent, and I think they're about to file papers. A pause. Okay, that's not what I was expecting. Can you be in my office in an hour? I'll be there. As I drove toward downtown, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number, asterisk this is Dr. Peterson. Your family is very concerned about your whereabouts. Please contact my office immediately to schedule your evaluation. Avoiding treatment will only make things worse, asterisk. I turned off my phone and kept driving. The war was escalating, and I was about to find out if I had any weapons left to fight with. Sarah's law office felt like a fortress after 3 days of living out of my car in cheap motels. She'd worked through the weekend, filing emergency motions and gathering evidence while I documented every interaction, every message, every invasion of privacy my family had orchestrated. The good news, she said Monday morning, spreading papers across her conference table, is that your family's case is falling apart. Dr. Peterson never should have diagnosed you without consent, the apartment photos were obtained illegally, and their PI violated several professional conduct rules. I stared at the restraining order she'd prepared. This feels so extreme. Danny, they hired a private investigator and tried to have you committed based on fabricated evidence. Extreme is what they brought to this fight. She handed me another document. This is a cease and desist regarding workplace interference. One more call to your office, and they're looking at harassment charges. My phone had been silent for 12 hours, the longest stretch since this whole nightmare began. Sarah had sent formal legal notices to everyone, Mom, Dad, Emma, Jake, Dr. Peterson, even the extended family members who'd been flooding my voicemail with guilt trips. What happens now? Now we wait to see if they're smart enough to back down, or if they want to escalate this to court. Sarah's expression was grimly satisfied. Your mother's evidence actually proves financial manipulation and invasion of privacy. If they push this, I'll file countersuits for harassment, defamation, and intentional infliction of emotional distress. That afternoon, Emma called from a blocked number. Danny, please. Mom's having panic attacks. She can't believe you got lawyers involved. She got lawyers involved first, Emma. She got doctors, private investigators, and therapists involved. I just got better lawyers. The family's falling apart. Grandma Rose had to be hospitalized because the stress is affecting her heart condition. Uncle Pete says you've declared war on your own blood. For a moment, the familiar guilt almost worked. Then I remembered Dr. Peterson's email, the photos of my broken appliances arranged like evidence, the PI questioning my coworkers about my sanity. Emma, they tried to have me committed. They broke into my apartment. They contacted my employer to sabotage my career. At what point does family become abuse? We were trying to help. You were trying to control me. There's a difference. 6 months later, I was living in a downtown loft with working appliances and furniture that wasn't held together with duct tape. My promotion had led to another promotion. Apparently, having your family try to sabotage your career makes you highly motivated to excel at work. The legal notices had worked. The calls stopped, the manipulation ceased, and slowly, I built a life surrounded by people who celebrated my successes instead of calculating what those successes could do for them. Marcus and I started a consulting firm. Sarah became one of my closest friends. I even started dating someone, a financial planner named Jessica, who thought my family stories were horrifying rather than normal. I did get one final message, 8 months after walking out of that hospital room. A single text from Mom, * your cousin David got married last weekend. The whole family was there asking where you were. I told them you were too successful now to care about family, *. I stared at that message for a long time, recognizing the final manipulation attempt. The implication that I was missing out, that success had cost me something irreplaceable. Then I deleted it and went back to my code. Because the truth was, I hadn't lost a family. I'd escaped one that saw me as a resource rather than a person. And for the first time in my adult life, when people asked, what about me, after hearing about my success, the answer was simple. Congratulations first. Then we'll talk.